The UCLA men's basketball season's in full swing, and we need you to get to Pauley Pavilion to support the Bruins. Don't miss a single chance to see this year's exciting team, led by Donovan Dent, Eric Daly Jr., Sky Clark, and Tyler Bilodeau. Pauley Pavilion, presented by Westcon Financials, the home of the greatest tradition in all of college basketball. We can't wait to have you join us as the Bruins continue to build on that legacy. With big-time matchups, go to UCLABruins.com/tickets to secure your seats today before it's too late. Let's get Pauley rocking.
Good afternoon. Getting right down to business here. We're doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, right after the Guy Benson Show at 3 and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with my pal Randy Wang. Right now, you got Motec on Money live on the air on 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at KBC.com, and you're on demand, Motec on Money podcast, KBC.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, all your favorite podcast platforms. Stocks rebound after yesterday's manic Monday starts of the week. Gold holding above 5,100 an ounce. Silver just below 90 an ounce. The crypto winter continues with Bitcoin dipping below 63,000. The Dow came in for a closing gain today of nearly 400 points following yesterday's more than 800-point washout. The S&P 500 closed at 52 and the Nasdaq gained 236 points. President Trump's new 10% global tariffs kicked in today as the fallout continues from the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling invalidating most of his tariffs last week. The president did sign an executive order imposing the 10% tariffs that went into effect early today, though the president subsequently threatened to raise that tariff to 15%. The Magnificent One NVIDIA stock moving higher today by $1.30 to $192 and change, a day ahead of its earnings report that's due out tomorrow. NVIDIA's earnings report could carry quite a positive tone, according to analysts at BNP today. Stellar earnings results from NVIDIA have been met with shrugs or worse in recent quarters, and some analysts aren't sure that this next report will be any different, according to MarketWatch. In the business of show business, the dramatic deal to acquire Warner Brothers Discovery looks like it may have a cliffhanger ending after all, with Warner Brothers saying that Paramount Skydance's new $31 a share proposal could lead to a better deal than its already accepted offer from Netflix. This is kicking off another round of negotiations for Warner Brothers Discovery. Workday stock taking a hit today, down by AI fears, and the earnings report only furthered those concerns. Looks like Workday shares ended the day higher to 130 and change. After hours, it's a different story. Nervous times in the oil markets with tensions running high in the Middle East as the U.S. continues to build up military forces around Iran for still to be determined military action. This as talks between Iran and the U.S. about Iran's nuclear program are set to resume on Thursday. Meanwhile, the aircraft carrier USS Gerald R. Ford, the world's largest aircraft carrier, is expected to arrive off of Israel's coast and dock in Haifa at some point today, according to various reports. As a part of the reinforcements, U.S. tankers as well as cargo and refueling aircraft have also arrived at Israeli airports and docks. The U.S. has spent several weeks growing its Middle East arsenal, despite already having a large presence in the region. We'll discuss the very latest on what's happening there in the Middle East with Jan Raviv, former network news correspondent, author of numerous books, including his latest, Target Iran, The Quest for Significance, Spies Against Armageddon, also Every Spy a Prince. He's also host of the Mossad Files podcast. Jan Raviv, Middle East expert, will be joining us live later this hour. Closer to home in the heart of downtown Los Angeles, looks like Graffiti Towers in downtown L.A., that bankrupt and unfinished construction project right across from Crypto.com Arena, has a new owner. We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about it. This big deal with Jerry Sullivan, national managing editor of the Real Deal commercial real estate news source. Jerry Sullivan will be joining me live later this hour. But first on your money, the markets, the economy, and the whole works now. Joining us live, Axel Merk, President and Chief Investment Officer at Merk Investments. His investment firm focused on gold and precious metals, which includes the VanEck Merk Gold ETF. He's also an economist and author of the book Sustainable Wealth, also a currency expert. Axel, thank you very much for taking the call live with us here this afternoon.
Great to be with you again.
Wonderful to have you with us, Axel. Certainly one huge headline after another here, but give us your reaction, first of all, on the Supreme Court ruling last week and the fallout on the tariffs here and the wild moves we've seen in the financial markets since all that happened.
Well, if you're confused, you're paying attention. I guess that's the short of it. I wonder that whether invoices I received that say that, hey, I was charged for a tariff, I'm going to get a refund. As you reported, FedEx filed a lawsuit, and that's probably one of the better ways for anybody to get a refund if that's what they want to do, because they are processing these things on behalf of customers. As far as businesses are concerned, I think at the World Economic Forum, I heard a panel that was a little while ago where they kind of said, well, we should just take a deep breath and none of the quote unquote extreme scenarios come to play. And then obviously with regard to the tariffs, yes, there might be some refunds. Yes, there might be some uncertainty, but I think we'll get a little bit more of the same. Some people say that this was the end of the beginning of tariffs. Clearly, President Trump wants to keep those in place. Yes, it's going to get complicated because these authorities that he has now are a little bit more convoluted. We'll hear more tonight at the State of the Union address on this as well, but we'll get more of noise. And at the end of the day, yes, there will be some tariffs in place. I mean, my own take is that for small business, this is much more painful than for big business. Big business can manage this much more easily than small business can.
On the live with Axel Merk, President and Chief Investment Officer at Merk Investments, and Axel, of course, you've had quite a run with the gold fund, and gold hitting all-time highs in recent months, and now back above 5,100 an ounce here after the pullback from its all-time high recently. Silver, of course, has also seen a record run-up. Give us your reaction to what's happening in the precious metals markets recently.
Well, in the context of tariffs, a year ago, before the quote-unquote liberation date, I said that tariffs put not just a wrench into global trade, it put the wrench into the flow of money as well, of currency as well. And so it's one of the reasons why precious metals have done well this week when new tariffs were imposed, so to speak. It's because when you have trade impeded, it's more difficult to have currency go into the U.S. to finance U.S. deficits. That's all else equal. This would mean a higher rate of borrowing. In any case, because we have these very strong interventions, so to speak, in the free market, it's, if nothing else, it is quote unquote inefficient. That means more money gets spent. And I think if there's one common theme in the US, in Europe, in China, is that governments are spending a lot of money to try to achieve their goals, which means more deficits. And all of that is done ineffectively. Military spending is obviously up as well. And so that's a backdrop in which gold historically is doing well. Gold miners are doing well. And of course, we also have some pressure on the Federal Reserve to keep rates lower.
All right. And what about the dollar in all this? How is it performing? We see it's about 118 versus the euro here now, 155 versus the Japanese yen, 134 against the British pound sterling, and the list goes on. What's the story with the dollar nowadays?
Well, there's a lot of noise. It's in the news almost every day, but I think a few weeks ago we were around 117 or 118. Not too much has happened. The one currency that's been somewhat suffering is the yen. That is consistently weak. We do have a government that just got stronger, obviously, in Japan that wants to do a strong stimulus as well. And so the market is scratching its head how that's going to be good for the currency. But at the same time, like the quote-unquote decline of the dollar, whereas many people are quote-unquote negative on the dollar now, it's been holding up somewhat. The one thing to keep in mind when we talk about the dollar, we often refer to the dollar index for historic reasons that has a huge overweight of the euro, about 57%. And so when we talk about the dollar, it's often versus the euro, and that's been quote-unquote somewhat boring in the scheme of things.
All right. Well, we don't believe in boring here, so thanks for laying it out on the line as clearly as you always do on the air live with Axel Merk. And as far as so-called digital gold, I know you pay attention to what's happening on all fronts here, but gold holding up very nicely, but Bitcoin and the other cryptos having a severe winter now with Bitcoin today at a 50% lower price than where it was from its all-time high not too long ago. What are your thoughts about what's happening there?
Well, it's the opposite of boring if you don't like that.
That's for sure.
That's for sure. What I have argued in the past is that crypto still wants to decide what it wants to be when it grows up. I think there's huge hope and expectation and technology of the decentralized ledger. Bitcoin itself has been highly correlated with quote unquote risk assets, meaning the S&P 500. And that probably only got strengthened when these ETFs were created tracking Bitcoin, when it was institutionalized. And so on the flip side, when we've had this downdraft in the S&P 500 or the recent AI sell-off of the quote unquote Merk 7, crypto has been driven down as well. The big question is whether it can kind of unanchor from that and create a life of its own down the road. But for the time being, yes, I mean, it doesn't look good. But then again, right, there's negative sentiment, and some people think it's a contrarian signal. I'm not going to have a trading advice on this. I stick to gold. It's much simpler. It's just a brick, and it's just much easier for me to kind of try to determine what's going to happen with gold than with Bitcoin.
One of the big advocates of Bitcoin, Michael Saylor, recently tweeted or X'd out, I guess we should say now, that Bitcoin, in his view, will either go to zero or to 1 million. Any thoughts on that comment? And back to gold and what you're involved with, where do you see the price of gold go from here?
Well, my speech is censored. We manage over 4 billion, are SEC registered. And so if I cannot say that Bitcoin is going to go to extremes, because the regulator would chop my head off. And I would just say that a company executive that you point out, right, that's gearing up his balance sheet to do this, it's a fascinating strategy, and that's the most positive way I can phrase it. It's a symptom of the time that we're in, and my guess is that some of those players may need to run against the wall before we can really find the future of Bitcoin, because as long as that doubling down always works, something at some point is going to break. And I'm not making a prediction as to that specific company, but I do have to scratch my head how that sort of strategy in the medium term is going to play out.
Do you have a target price for gold and silver, for that matter, right now?
You noticed that I didn't answer that question, right? I try to
I
not
pay attention.
give a price target.
I pay attention.
I try to not give a price target, and the big reason I try not to give a price target is that the gold market is fairly small, and so you don't need much enthusiasm in that space to immediately break through any price target you have. And also, if you just look at recent weeks, we've had several percentage moves in a day, 2, 3, 4, 5% moves in a day, and so any price target that might be reasonable a week later, you'll just have to revise. I think the dynamics that have supported gold are firmly in place. And if we continue on the path that we've been on, I wouldn't be surprised if it's substantially higher a few years down the road. But I have no idea what it's going to do tomorrow.
All right. And, of course, you're also a Fed watcher, and we've had many conversations over the years under various Fed heads with this new one coming in now. What are your thoughts here about Warsh? We did see that wash out for the market, we called it. Initial reaction wasn't all that positive, but what about Kevin Warsh as possibly the next Fed chair, and what will that mean? We may hear more about that tonight as well in the State of the Union speech.
I've watched Kevin Warsh ever since the financial crisis, and I have deep respect for him. I think his main contribution may be to get the Fed out of the news. A lot of the ideas that he has, they're not going to change where interest rates are going to be tomorrow. But what they will do is they can reform that this debating club, as I've called it, I believe, on your show, is going to be much more constructive and much more rules-based, is going to be focused on the task at hand, not to have the folks at the Fed on CNBC every 5 seconds to make a comment on live data. There's a lot the Federal Reserve can do to get out of the news and out of the purview of the administration, and one of them is to focus on monetary policy. I don't like the various emergency measures we've had since 2008. What that does, it pretty much invites the administration or politicians to meddle with the Fed. Now, of course, President Trump might not be able to help it no matter what, but all else equal, I think Kevin Warsh can take things to to a much more normal level. And a lot of that might mean that the Federal Reserve should be doing less than it is doing right now. And Kevin Walsh is the right job at the right time for the Fed.
And, of course, you'll have the tough job of that Fed mandate on jobs and inflation. And speaking of inflation, what do you see ahead here on inflation? Historically, of course, we've seen precious metals soar when inflation is running hot. What is the price of gold telling us at these levels?
One of the things Kevin Walsh has talked about is that even the Fed's own forecasts don't expect inflation to go back down to 2%. And he thinks that's inexcusable, that it's the Fed's job to get inflation down there. And if their own forecasts say it's not going to be there, what does that say about the credibility of the Fed? Now, Kevin Walsh is known to be a hawk historically, but importantly, he believes in the productivity boom that we can get from AI. And he thinks we need to run the economy hot to be able to afford the sort of debt we have, but at the same time not egg on the administration to spend more money by keeping rates too low. So all else equal, as far as the rate path is concerned, it probably means to be just about where we are, with some cuts potentially coming later this year. And historically, that's a very positive environment for precious metals.
Terrific, Axel. Always great to speak with you. Thank you very much for taking the call here and covering all the bases this afternoon. That is Axel Merk, President and Chief Investment Officer at Merk Investments. His investment firm focused on gold and precious metals. It includes the VanEck Merk Gold ETF. Axel Merk also is author of the book Sustainable Wealth. Axel, thank you very much for taking the call with us live this afternoon.
You didn't start a business just to keep the lights on. You're here to sell more today than yesterday. You're here to win. Lucky for you, Shopify built the best converting checkout on the planet. Like the just one tapping, ridiculously fast acting, sky-high sales stacking, champion of checkouts. That's the good stuff right there. So if your business is in it to win it, win with Shopify. Start your free trial today at shopify.com/win.
The UCLA men's basketball season's in full swing, and we need you to get to Pauley Pavilion to support the Bruins. Don't miss a single chance to see this year's exciting team, led by Donovan Dent, Eric Daly Jr., Sky Clark, and Tyler Bilodeau. Pauley Pavilion, presented by Westcon Financials, the home of the greatest tradition in all of college basketball. We can't wait to have you join us as the Bruins continue to build on that legacy. With big-time matchups, go to UCLABruins.com/tickets to secure your seats today before it's too late. Let's get Pauley rocking.
It's the biggest game on the planet, and nobody breaks it down like Jim Rome.
Super Bowl run. Who do you think will be the last one standing this year?
Fearless debate and the best callers in sports.
I don't care what you say, defense wins Super Bowl.
That defense absolutely is Super Bowl caliber. The quarterbacking sure as hell wasn't.
He's the Spitfire of sports smack.
A lot to get to, and I'm not sure you're going to like all of it. Honestly, I don't even care if you like all of it or not. I have a job to do.
The Jim Rome Show.
Get up in here.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Moteca Money continues, 790 KABC. Nice rebound today for stocks, but not quite erasing yesterday's losses. The Dow of 370 points at the closing bell today at 49,174. Yesterday, we saw the Dow plunge 822 points. The S&P 500 gained 52 at 6890, and the NASDAQ up 236 at 22,864. The volatility index pulling back today by 7% after a 10% spike yesterday. The yield in the 10-year note appears to be pretty tame lately, and that's been impacting the fixed-rate mortgage rates, which 10-year note is pegged to. We see right now the yield in the 10-year note back down to 4.04%. Looks like fixed rates, mortgage rates may be coming down some more this week. The price of gold, meanwhile, as we just discussed, getting a pop this week, pulling back right now down about $25 at $5,151 an ounce. Silver at $87.38 an ounce. Crude oil futures, we've seen upward pressure there given the tensions in the Middle East. Right now, the price of crude oil in New York hovering at around $66 a barrel. The crypto winter continues with Bitcoin right now down about 300 at 64,158. It had cracked below 64K earlier today. Ethereum right now at 1,859 and Doge at the moment at 9 cents. Tomorrow's going to be a big day in the tech world with NVIDIA earnings. Expected out tomorrow. NVIDIA stock today closed up $1.30 at $192.85. Workday shares moving lower in after-hours trading, down about 8% after the company came up short with its guidance and discussed stepped-up AI investments of its own. Workday stock has been beaten down by AI fears, as a lot of other companies have lately. Workday shares had closed up $1.02 at 130.23. Elsewhere in the tech space, we see Apple getting a pop today up nearly $6, back to $272 and change. Amazon up $3.29 at 208.56. Tesla shares up nearly 10 at 409 and change. Freeport McMoran up more than $2 at 67.88. That's the company involved with copper and precious metals. Microsoft up today by about $4.50 to $3.89 a share. Taking a look at what's happening here in Hollywood, looks like the drama continues. Takeover drama surrounding Warner Brothers Discovery. Warner Brothers Discovery late today said Paramount Skydance's new $31 a share proposal could lead to a better deal than its already accepted merger deal from Netflix, kicking off another round of negotiations for Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers stock closed up 23 cents today at $29.15. Netflix moved at more than $2 at 78 and change. Paramount Skydance shares down 17 cents at 10.39. Otaka Money continues, 790 KABC. Nervous times in the Middle East and in the oil markets. Tensions running high as the U.S. continues to build up military forces around Iran for a still-to-be-determined possible military action. We might hear more about this from President Trump, weighing military action in Iran and contending with other geopolitical matters. In the meantime, it must have been a dramatic sight today, although it's not been confirmed by the U.S. Navy. But the USS Gerald R. Ford, the world's largest aircraft carrier, arrived off Israel's coast and was sent to dock at Haifa today, the latest addition to U.S. reinforcements in the Middle East, as Jerusalem and Washington gear up for a potential war against Iran. The Ford Carrier Strike Group, officially known as Carrier Strike Group Number 10, entered the Mediterranean after transiting the Strait of Gibraltar, a movement reported by many news outlets tracking U.S. naval deployments. The U.S. Navy has not formally confirmed whether the Abraham Lincoln or the Gerald R. Ford are their locations and where the Ford is actually docked here at the moment. More than 40,000 personnel are stationed across military bases and naval assets. With the Ford's arrival in Israel, several thousand more service members will be added to the total. Joining us live now, Middle East expert Dan Raviv, former network news correspondent, author of numerous books, including his latest, Target Iran, Spies Against Armageddon, and Every Spy a Prince. He also wrote The Quest for Significance. He's also host of the Mossad Files podcast. Dan Raviv, thank you very much for taking the call with us live this afternoon.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Frank.
All right, take it from the top. Give us your reaction to the arrival of the world's largest aircraft carrier at the port of Haifa today.
No, if it happens, that will be remarkable cooperation between the U.S. and Israel, but a small correction. Kind of underlining what you reported there, Frank, that the U.S. Navy doesn't confirm where are the aircraft carriers, where's the strike group. No, it docked today, as a matter of fact, at a base on the island of Cyprus. And it's a little bit embarrassing because all the local reporters said they learned from the Navy and the Navy personnel that mighty aircraft carrier has a problem with its sewage system, backed up toilets, etc. Experts on the Navy say one problem is that it has been at sea, on duty, involved in operations for some 8 months. It's been really tough for the men and women of the Navy who've been on the Gerald Ford and in the strike force. So they're in Cyprus right now. It's kind of a problem with the ship. Of course, that does not affect what it can do militarily. And as you know, a second aircraft carrier, the Abraham Lincoln, that's much closer to Iran, maybe 250 miles from Iran, just outside the Persian Gulf. So it's a remarkable armada, as President Trump has called it, and I do think that in the State of the Union address, we'll get some more hints as to what he has in mind and whether military action will occur soon.
Isn't that something? On the line with Dan Raviv, the Jerusalem Post had reported, we were saying earlier that the Ford was expected to dock in Haifa, which, by the way, was hit hard during the war between Iran and Israel last year when Israel struck the nuclear facilities along with the United States, right? What is the situation there in Haifa as we know it now?
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. And so you've made a good point there. If hostilities were to break out, we actually would not want our aircraft carrier at an Israeli port. On the other hand, 12 powerful F-22 Raptor jets, right? U.S. F-22s flew today from a base in England to Israel. Now, that is unusual. It's almost like having an aircraft carrier, because in this case, we have aircraft and refueling planes and other support has gone to Israel to be ready, I would say, to defend the Israeli skies and the skies over any aircraft carriers in the Eastern Mediterranean. So again, it's all part of this big lineup. It's meant to frighten the Iranians, of course, and maybe we'll learn from the State of the Union address what it is. Because when President Trump had lunch today, which is a tradition in the hours before the State of the Union address, had lunch with network TV anchors, right? Two of those anchors have told us that he said the Iranians want a deal even more than I do, but they won't say the sacred words, "We won't build nuclear bombs." Now, it's a little puzzling because Iran does claim it will never build nuclear bombs, but refuses to give up its ability to enrich uranium in Iran. So I'm not even sure the two sides, the U.S. and Iran, are on the same page. That's one reason why almost everyone in the Middle East believes there will be U.S. airstrikes on Iran sometime in the coming days.
All right, in the coming days, we are led to believe that negotiations between the U.S. and Iran will resume on Thursday, right? What do we know about what's being said there and where they stand at this point?
Mm-hmm. Right. I hear that the spokespeople for the two U.S. negotiators, President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and President Trump's friend and investor and now a negotiator, Steve Witkoff, the spokespeople refuse to confirm whether there will be talks on Thursday. The Iranians say they want to resume the talks Thursday with Oman officials of that Arab country, but in Geneva, Switzerland, and maybe not even directly in separate rooms, back and forth. It hasn't been that productive in the past. So the Iranians want to talk. They want to maybe present their counterproposal. The U.S. is being a little dicey. I'll give you one clue as to why I don't think U.S. strikes will occur tomorrow, Wednesday, because Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India is visiting Israel tomorrow, and Israel really wants to be great friends with India. I don't think they're going to create a war zone. So it's not tomorrow. Maybe Thursday there will be talks. And if those talks were disappointing, then I wouldn't be surprised if President Trump ordered some airstrikes.
See you tonight. Read about it tomorrow. But hear it now on Motec on Money, live on the air with Dan Raviv, veteran network news correspondent and a Middle East expert. We're also watching these reports about Iran reportedly nearing a deal to buy supersonic anti-ship missiles from China. Do those reports hold any water, Dan Raviv? And what's your reaction to that news today?
Well, it seems to me definitely not confirmed, but I do know that for months the U.S. has been talking to China about not playing ball with Iran, not helping Iran, not buying so much Iranian oil. So far, China's doing it, sometimes using unmarked ships. Military help that might be used against U.S. Navy ships, the U.S. would probably tell China that's unforgivable. So I don't expect that to happen.
All right, and what about Russia and Iran, Russia's role in possible military action?
Well, it's certainly in the picture, and keep in mind that Kushner and Witkoff are also negotiating with the Russians and the Ukrainians, hoping somehow to end the Ukrainian war. And so I would think that the matter of Iran also comes up there. Russia and Iran do cooperate. Iran has supplied thousands of attack drones to the Russians, who are using them against Ukraine. On the side, there are business deals, neither Russia nor Ukraine obeying any international sanctions and basically helping each other. I don't think the U.S. can stop that. Again, I make an exception. Weapons that could be used against Americans, the U.S. would not tolerate that. Business deals in the black market, I suppose it's part of reality.
So many moving parts on this multi-dimensional chessboard here. I don't know if you saw the report that says the U.S. issued an ultimatum to Baghdad to form a government without Iranian influence or face sanctions. What about Iraq in all this, which we understand has been heavily influenced by Iran since the U.S. went in there?
That's right. And basically, since Saddam Hussein was overthrown, thanks to the U.S. invasion of Iraq, the true nature of Iraqi culture, which has a Shiite Muslim majority, has come out. And so the politicians in Iraq, the ones really in charge, they are Shiites who feel close to Iran and get aid from Iran. So the U.S. had its statement. But let's go beyond that. The fact is that in western Iraq, there are militia groups. The Iraqi government says we can't control them, but Iran is known to supply them, and they sometimes have launched missiles at Israel and might be considered a threat toward U.S. forces who are posted in several Middle Eastern countries. As you may know, Frank, including this U.S. Navy deployment, there are 35,000 American men and women in uniform in the Middle East theater who could be at risk if hostilities break out.
Dan Raviv, thank you very much for that comprehensive update on all the major news today. That is Middle East expert Dan Raviv, veteran, former network news correspondent, author of numerous books. His latest, Target Iran. Dan Raviv, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
My pleasure, Frank.
The UCLA men's basketball season's in full swing, and we need you to get to Pauley Pavilion to support the Bruins. Don't miss a single chance to see this year's exciting team, led by Donovan Dent, Eric Daly Jr., Sky Clark, and Tyler Bilodeau. Pauley Pavilion, presented by Westcon Financials, the home of the greatest tradition in all of college basketball. We can't wait to have you join us as the Bruins continue to build on that legacy. With big-time matchups, go to UCLABruins.com/tickets to secure your seats today before it's too late. Let's get Pauley rocking.
This isn't your average podcast.
This is one of the most, if not the most controversial podcasts.
This is Full Send.
Do you like party ever?
I think Post Malone told me once he went to like one of your parties.
What was the biggest after party you guys ever did?
We had one with you guys.
I know,
that
was
lit.
Unfiltered conversations.
I'm not going to say any names, but
We got Dr. Phil pulling up.
Jake Paul's coming in today.
Benjamin Netanyahu, he's about to walk into the podcast right now.
I feel like he'd leave.
Yeah, maybe.
The Full Send podcast.
This is so crazy.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Motac of Money continues at 790 KABC. Big news in the heart of downtown Los Angeles. That big eyesore, so-called Graffiti Towers, looks like it has a new owner. Let's bring in the expert on all this, and that is Jerry Sullivan, who's the national managing editor of The Real Deal, the authoritative commercial real estate news source. Jerry Sullivan, thank you very much for taking the call live with us here this afternoon.
It's always my pleasure, Frank.
Great to have you with us here. We've been following this drama for years now, this unfinished eyesore in the heart of downtown Los Angeles, that tower project, which was to have been a $1 billion project run by a Chinese developer, went bankrupt, and it's been sitting there for quite some time unfinished, and graffiti vandals took it over, and we see what it is there now. And now the big news this week that has a new owner. Take it from the top and tell us what we need to know about this.
Yeah, and I think our latest report by our reporter Elena Botras indicated that informed sources saying there's another bidder in the offing or in the wings also. And so hold the phone on this one, Frank. I think there's a bid of about $475 million for the property, KCP and Lend-Lease. I'm not sure that's going to walk. I think there's a couple things I would watch very closely. Mr. Chowdhury, the fellow who runs KCP, has check his record on hospital management and ownership down in Orange County. There are some questions about past business practices. I noticed that he said he intends to complete the project with the same design that it started with, and that design was heavy on hotel and retail, neither of which are in great demand. I just noticed LA's air traffic down 3% last year. Not a good sign for somebody looking to build a lot of hotels right in the downtown and near the convention center. So that's another, I think, concern. And the price, $479. I think they're probably going to need anywhere from, I think the low estimate is $800 million to well over $1 billion to finish this thing. So I think there's a lot of question marks. The other bid that we reported on, the source indicated it was City View, Sean Burton, a very substantial, long-standing multifamily developer in Los Angeles with pretty deep connections and roots. And so we'll see if that materializes.
That is very big news. And The Real Deal, of course, therealdeal.com is the website for the authoritative information on commercial real estate here in Los Angeles and indeed nationwide. We're speaking live on the air with Jerry Sullivan, National Managing Editor, The Real Deal, commercial real estate news source. And I see the latest headline here, which came out after that initial report. Another bidder in the picture for Oceanwide Plaza. That's the actual name of Graffiti Towers. The nickname of that place is Graffiti Towers due to what's happened there. Any talk about what's going to happen with these towers? Will they ultimately be completed or will they be torn down?
You know, and that I think that remains to be seen. Obviously, the KCP Lend-Lease bid that got the initial reports, they indicate they plan to complete it. Again, I checked some of the backgrounds and some of the pricing information and maybe assess that for yourself, whether that's likely. And, you know, what City View might have in mind, I don't know. I do know that Sean Burton's a substantial operator and, you know, operates in multifamily and has for a long time. So I don't know if that portends maybe some shift to even more of the apartment or condo aspect of it and away from hotel and retail, you know, if a bid from City View should materialize.
That is very interesting. And, of course, based on the reaction we've seen already to what's come out on this, looks like the priority for city officials is to get that place cleaned up and before the Olympics, certainly, right?
I believe so. I mean, I thought a little bit unusual, the prominence of Mayor Bass's comments on this business story. And so, but they were quite prominent, and I think in the LA Times report, and that gave me pause. But I do think, you know, it's got to be a priority. What the best path forward is, you know, we'll see. I do worry that, you know, it has all the ingredients of a desperate deal. You have the clock ticket on the Olympics. You have this giant eyesore. You know, so I think everyone ought to tread pretty cautiously here.
Well, you're doing a great job, you and your colleagues here in Los Angeles, doing a great job covering all the moving parts on this big story. And so it looks like we haven't heard the final word on this then.
No, stay tuned. I think that, you know, plenty more. Keep driving by there and checking in on it, Frank.
That's every time I drive by there, folks, I send Jerry a picture of what that place looks like. So you definitely, I was there today, by the way. I was not in a good angle, however, and I was not able to send you the latest photo, but we're going to stay on top of that. What else is catching your attention here? What other big deals are you seeing in commercial real estate? And looks like they've just about completed that new office tower in Century City. There are a few places in the world where they're building office towers, but one such place is Century City, which is nearly 100% occupied. I believe you've told us that. So that's certainly big news. And elsewhere in downtown, there are still some struggles there, of course, with the occupancy, and that's still slow return to the office. Maybe you can give us an update on what you're seeing here in the Los Angeles area.
Well, you know, sort of an interesting one has to do with on the Hollywood scene with studios and sound stages. And Goldman Sachs foreclosed on Hackman Capital's Radford State Studios, which is essentially the old CBS studios in Studio City. So they just put it on the market, and I think they're asking $450 million. You know, the Hackman paid $1.8 billion 5 years ago. I think the note on it was $1.1 billion. So it would look like Goldman Sachs are going to take a haircut to unload it. And in the meanwhile, you know, Hollywood has been hurting, and I guess there's talk of more labor strife. A studio just opened, East End Studios just opened in the Art District, bought 255,000 square feet of studio space online, and I don't think they have any tenants yet. So that's a very interesting, you know, especially from the company town aspect with Hollywood, the industry, and all the sound stages that go with that. I mean, that's a lot of real estate, and you know, we'll have to see whether the city needs that much, the market needs that much anymore.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Jerry. I believe you're in New York at the moment in that terrible snowstorm. Give us an update on what's happening there.
Yeah, well, the snowstorm came and went, and I don't think there might be some more tomorrow. It wasn't nearly as significant, I think, as the first one we had maybe last month, about 3 or 4 weeks ago. This one, it was a good heavy snow on Sunday. Also, the temperatures got up to the point where it could melt a bit. And that's very helpful in New York because when you push the snow off the street. It builds up these barriers, and on the sidewalks it can get difficult, and the landlords all have to get very busy on chipping away their sidewalks and so on and so forth. But this one, I think, the last one we hit about a 3-week stretch where there was never got above freezing, and so it made it more difficult. I think this one is, we'll see what blows in overnight, but
Wow.
I don't think this one will be as bad.
Isn't that something? Well, you do an amazing job there, and so you're looking forward to coming here, I'm sure, as soon as possible, back to the Los Angeles area. Any big conferences, any real deal conferences coming up anytime soon?
No, the one and our immediate headlights is our New York forum, and then our LA forum is typically later in the year, around September, so we'll be planning for that. So that's we do the New York forum, and then we have a Future Cities event, which we have in Kiowa, South Carolina. Very interesting, and if anybody's interested, can check our website for information on that. But very much focused on innovation in the real estate industry and the outlook going forward.
Terrific, Jerry. Well, thank you very much for taking the call here. Look forward to seeing you out here again, and you'll get ready for some more photos of graffiti towers in the meantime. Jerry Sullivan, National Managing Editor of The Real Deal, commercial real estate news source at therealdeal.com. Thank you very much for joining us live on 790 KBC.
The UCLA men's basketball season's in full swing, and we need you to get to Pauley Pavilion to support the Bruins. Don't miss a single chance to see this year's exciting team, led by Donovan Dent, Eric Daly Jr., Sky Clark, and Tyler Bilodeau. Pauley Pavilion, presented by Westcon Financials, the home of the greatest tradition in all of college basketball. We can't wait to have you join us as the Bruins continue to build on that legacy. With big-time matchups, go to UCLABruins.com/tickets to secure your seats today before it's too late. Let's get Pauley rocking.